know, you can tell when you see them, and Napolitano's talked about this, that she knows everybody hates her and calls her big sis, and she tries to make jokes about it. But they know we know, and that gets to them. They know Congress has got a 9% approval rating. They know that the people are aware of their crimes. They know that we know about Fast and Furious, that they meant to blame the Second Amendment with. They know that we know. And so they're just hoping that they can stage some new events in the near future and get out of this, as all these Democratic strategists in the Financial Times of London, Washington Post, and others. I mean, we've written the articles. We've shown you the quotes. Just type in, if you're a new listener, into the NSA search engine, Google, or I'd use Start Page. It doesn't track you. Just type in Obama advisors call for new Oklahoma City, and you'll get all the sick quotes. And they think we're so stupid, they sit around and talk about how new Oklahoma City would sure help them. I mean, 1/100th of a millimeter of veil. A veil so thin, you're not even sure there's a veil there. It just kind of softens it a bit. It gives them a small entree of deniability. Because they've always live in this world of knowing the general public's unconscious. It's like walking around when everybody's sleeping in the city. You can do whatever you want. Everybody's slumped over their steering wheels, or slumped over the stove at the diner or at the doctor's office. Everybody's just kind of in a coma. And these little greedy New World Order demons, because people are unconscious from watching television, the rest of it, can just run around engaging in their mischief. But now they know more and more of us are waking up. Yeah, there it is. Top Clinton official, only a terror attack can save Obama. There's a whole bunch of them. That's just one of the articles. That's Shapiro saying it. But I was watching them, and they look completely freaked out. And they better be. Because they know they're working for the most vicious murderers the world's ever seen. They're just puppets themselves. So they got that to worry about. And they got those of us that are waking up and waking others up, and they got a big problem. And they want to stage new terror attacks so bad they can taste it. The problem is everybody's looking for it. And when they did do the underwear bomber, our people were on the plane and at the airport and saw the feds get him on the plane, set it on record. A month and a half later, it came out in congressional testimony when the State Department said, don't blame us. We were ordered to get him on the plane. Because Undersecretary of State Kennedy had somewhat of a soul and put that info out. And the Congress people were like, waving their arms. We've played the video. We're just like, hold on. The body language is stop right. Don't tell them we did it. Don't tell them we hopped up some idiot on drugs and rolled him on there with a firecracker so they could put body scanners in the airports and train everybody to be prisoners so we can then set it up in the rest of the country. People say, well, doesn't the government know it's making everybody angry that they're sticking their hands down our pants and groping us and doing all this to us? Doesn't the government know it's... Yeah, they don't care. They know you're already awake. So now it's about setting the precedent with their own security forces to carry out these unconstitutional crimes against humanity. And it's going to be everywhere. It's already on the streets and highways all over the U.S., and it's coming to every town. You will pull up, and you will have federalized, crazed, roid-head moron cops. I've already seen videos across the country drag you and your family out and line you up. And then they're going to start putting people on pickup list for questioning. And then folks are going to start disappearing. And then cops, when you stop at checkpoints, people are know they have nothing to lose. And let me tell you, the New World Order right there plans a civil war to start. And you idiots are going to march right into it with these globalist crooks marching you right into it. And you don't care. I've analyzed what you're going to do because you like the petty authority. You're going to do it. You idiots. You morons. It doesn't matter, though. You're going to be just like the Germans. It's going to take total judgment of this country for you to wake up. A third of the Germans in World War II went bye-bye. Don't ever forget that. So, just like 51 million babies have been chopped up and used for food flavoring, and cosmetics and the rest of it, and stem cells, you're not going to be as lucky as those babies. Their deaths were quick. And they were innocent. We know right where they went. Express. And I know you think it's all funny. The fool laughs because you hadn't seen what I've seen. I've seen reality. I see it all. I know it. I see it. And let me tell you, it blasts me every second. The knowledge of how foolish those of you that serve darkness are. You are pathetic. Led by your demonic preachers, most of them on federal payroll, secretly now public, clergy response teams. Now, they're scared to death of this, so they've got BuzzFeed, and this was picked up by Fox News, and they did the rounds yesterday. Poll newsletter, OK City was an inside job. And I read this. Paul may deny it. I know he didn't write lots of the newsletters because I know the types he wrote. This is Paul's writing, I can tell you. And you get a grasp of when no one knew what a false flag was. In the month of April, that week, he had a newsletter out saying this. And I think he should run with it. I think he should have campaign ads showing the governor says they're removing the bombs. The grand jurors say the government did it. I mean, I think they should show all that. I think Paul should run with this. In a 95 issue of Ron Paul's Survival Report, a newspaper published by the future presidential candidate speculates the federal government bombed the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City. And they go on and demonize him, and they demonize myself in here and, say how horrible I am. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. We have the newscast with them removing the unexploded bombs. I've interviewed the cops that were there. And the feds came over and said, if you talk about what you saw, you and your wife are dead. I've had those cops on. And some of the cops got killed. And I got the Attorney General's email. He was Deputy Attorney General then. He's the Attorney General now, saying we got to cover this up. But listen to this newsletter from Ron Paul and tell me he isn't a beauty. Oklahoma City, this is 1 week after the attack. Now listen to this. Yeah, folks, Ron Paul is the prototype of Alex Jones. That's right. We're far from knowing everything or even many things about the horrific bombing of Oklahoma Federal Building. The latest rumors are tying this to the private militias. Is the government media combine set to smear everyone who questions the wonderfulness of the federal government? This is clearly their plan, whether or not the criminals responsible turn out to be right-wing extremists. Some people even think the government itself could have been responsible. Clearly, it has been worried about its waning authority and respect among the people, and such an event builds up the central government. I don't know, I've got Bill Clinton admitting that later in his memoirs, and all these current people saying they want to stage one. But see, Paul just points out reality. That's why he's evil. The government would not use its own agents. The sophistication of Paul. These people say spy agencies frequently use false flag recruitment. This is the crazed men recruited into right-wing terrorist cells would not know they were actually working for the BATF. Wow, they even mentioned the very group that did it. No one even knew that at the time. Talk about intel. For example, the New York Times is blabbering about the hate generated by the Branch Davidians. And it goes on to say, interestingly, it's so small I can't even read it. It says, incinerating them does not, of course, count as an act of hate. The world, I'm going to come back and read this after the break because it's really hard to read. Once I printed it, I could read it online, but the printing kind of blurred some of it. I'm going to come back and read what Ron Paul said about OKC straight ahead. That thing was as phony as a $3 bill. So I've interviewed the former head of Air Force weapons development saying Oklahoma City was an inside job. I've got federal documents from lawsuits confirming it. I've interviewed countless police officers who were threatened by the feds with murder. I've interviewed the federal workers who saw the ATF planting the bombs on the columns, Jane Graham and others who've gone public with McVeigh. McVeigh told Nichols and others he was a government agent meant to infiltrate and set up the Elohim City compound, itself run by the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's come out in federal documents. He got very upset 2 days before, just like in the World Trade Center bombing in '93. This is New York Times, CBS News. because Ahmad Salam knew they were setting him up, an Egyptian CIA asset. He said, first it was going to be a fake bomb. Then it was going to be a real bomb, but not real detonators. Then you said we got to have real detonators for conviction. Then I tell you they're about to bomb it, and you won't SWAT team raid them, and you tell me go ahead with the bombing, and he's recording the FBI knowing they're about to set him up. The bombing happens. 2 days after, he shows up at a press conference, plays the tape shaking, hands out copies to the media. The federal government freaks out, pays him $1.2 million, and it's under the rug. That's how they do it, folks. So McVeigh was like Ahmad Salam, but he wasn't smart enough to record them once it happened. And, I mean, he's in there with them, planting the bombs, boom, getting it ready. Well, I've interviewed multiple witnesses that saw all this, Jane Graham and others. And she's like, what are you doing? Oh, we're telephone men. What are these? Oh, and it was all meant to be a sting, they're told, but then it goes forward. You understand? It's always a sting that goes bad. And cops are like, what's these bombs? You want your wife to get killed? Shut up. I mean, I've had the cops on, people that were in there. That's who runs America, okay? Get it through your head. Grow up. The local crack house isn't laundering the $500 billion in drug money a year. The big banks are, and they've been caught. Grow up. And Ron Paul, a week after Oklahoma City, sees, I mean, within minutes, Bill Clinton came out and blamed talk radio and said, shut it down. It was obviously the whole thing was scripted. And now all these Democratic advisors write memos about how great it'd be to have a new one to blame it on their enemies, like we're stupid, like we're dumb. And then Ron Paul, now they've dug up this newsletter, and I know Paul's writing. This sounds like he wrote it. It was the addendums. It was the promo things by another company they hired promoting their newsletters that were special editions in the mail are 8 of the 10 offending things. This is from the real newsletter. It goes on, we're far from knowing everything or even many things about the horrific bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building. The latest rumors are tying this to the private militias. Is the government media combine set to smear everyone who questions the wonderfulness of the federal government? Yes, that did happen. You're right again, Paul. That's clearly their plan, whether or not the criminals responsible turn out to be a right-wing extremist. Some people even think that the government itself could have been responsible. Certainly, it has been worried about its waning authority and respect among the people. And such an event builds up the central government. Yeah, look out, because they just had Waco that embarrassed them, so they staged it. They've had Fast and Furious, which is a false flag, to blame the Second Amendment. They could stage one real quick here. That's why we got to expose false flag. That stops them. The government would not use its own agents. That's actually not true. They set them up in a sting. These people say spy agencies frequently use false flag recruitment. That is, the crazed man recruited in the far-right terrorist cell would not know they were actually working for the BATF, for example. The New York Times is blabbering about the hate generated by the Branch Davidians. Incinerating them does not, of course, count as an act of hate. The word reserved for anti-establishment types. And then he goes on to talk about this being a government-staged event to pass anti-terrorism legislation. So I'm going over Ron Paul here being demonized by Fox News and others for pointing out that Oklahoma City's an inside job. This is back from the newsletter back in 1995, about a week after the attack, in the survival section, or a survival version. Some neoconservatives who backed the, look at all these terms we think are new, these are old. Some neoconservatives who backed the Waco massacre are sadly calling for a bigger FBI and much more security, i.e. more of a police state, and saying, this is 16, 17 years ago, folks, it's all come true. President Clinton, we stand behind you 100%. Oh, the media are trumpeting a poll claiming that 58% of Americans would give up some of their liberties to enable the government to run a nationwide anti-terrorism campaign. This is the danger, and it must be opposed. That's Ron Paul writing right there. The other stuff you can tell isn't. Government always uses any crisis to try to seize more power and money. More on this next month. So they're running around freaking out their dear little terror attack, and this will just backfire on them. Because I know Kurt Nimmo wrote an article on this. Fox attempts to discredit Ron Paul with Oklahoma City Job Newsletter. Just search that, and you can pull up the article. It's now already rolled off in the archive section of the featured news area.